am Shannon Munner, and I want to hear about you and the issues you care about. Look for me here every week in the press room, live on Searchlight's Facebook page. We ask a question and you give us your take, or you ask a question and we find the people who have the facts. It's time for real people, real stories, and real talk. Every Wednesday at 8 in the press room on Searchlight's Facebook page. Now, let's talk. Good night and welcome to the press room. I am your host, Shannon Munro. Every Wednesday evening at 8, right here on Searchlight's Facebook page, we will discuss matters of national importance and how they affect the Vincentian public. Thank you for joining us. Girl in Witness Protection Program sexually molested. Assistant pastor guilty of rape of a minor. Gang rape victim forced to take time off school. Alleged rapist not charged. Bekwe Baba gets 19 years for rape of a child. Cases of sexual abuse of children on the rise. Accused rapist charged with raping another teen. Mothers silent about sexual abuse of daughters. 38-year-old man guilty of incest and rape. These are all headlines that have graced our newspapers and websites over the years. And last week, social media again erupted when a video showing a girl under the age of 5 involved in a sex act with an adult man was shared across social media to the disgust and anger of many. The outrage was made worse when the perpetrator, after pleading guilty, was sentenced to a mere 4 years in jail. On this week's program, we will discuss child sexual abuse. How widespread is the problem in St. Vincent and the Grenadines? And are we doing everything we can do to protect our youngest citizens and ensure justice for them? Joining us tonight is lawyer and human rights advocate Joshua Bado and constables Clisina Butler and Romancia Jordan of the Sexual Offences Unit of the Royal St Vincent and the Grenadines Police Force. Remember to share the live stream and leave your comments. We will try to answer them during the program. We will be right back. Welcome back and welcome to the press room, Joshua Badu. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. You're muted.
Good night. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure being invited to this evening's proceedings. It's always good when we can spread awareness and talk about these issues because they're indeed very serious issues that affect a lot of persons in St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Thank you again for joining us. The first thing I would like for you to do for our viewers, could you please define rape and indecent assault so that we can have an understanding of how they're different? And could you give the maximum penalty for each of these offenses?
Thank you for your question. Rape and indecent
Assault.
assault
Yes.
are offenses which are listed under the Criminal Code of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The sections that speak to sexual offenses run from sections 122 to 148. Okay? Rape is listed under section 123 of the Criminal Code. And in terms of indecent assault, that is listed at section 127 of the criminal code. Now, if you read each of these sections, they would give you a little bit of information regarding exactly what these offenses mean. The laws in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, in terms of the criminal code, most of these laws were influenced by or inherited by the legal system at the time in the UK or the British Empire. So our laws were influenced, or the laws that we currently have in St. Vincent and Grenadines were transplanted from the British Empire, and therefore, when we want to really understand what these offenses mean, unfortunately, the actual criminal code is not sufficient. What we may need to do is we may need to look into case law in the UK and see how the law was actually interpreted, and we call that common law or the decisions that were made by a judge. Case law. In terms of rape, though, the offense, the section 123 says that a man who rapes a woman is guilty of an offense and liable to imprisonment for life. So, right off the bat, we can see that this provision in the criminal code is not gender neutral. It talks
Okay.
about the perpetrator of rape being a man and the victim being a woman. And we know in reality that is not how it happens all the time. Okay?
Yes.
Boys can be raped, and also women can rape. It goes on to talk about how a man commits rape if he has unlawful sexual intercourse with a woman who at the time did not consent to it, and at that time he knew she did not consent to the intercourse or was reckless as to whether she consented to it. So basically, in a nutshell, it's a man having sex with a woman without her voluntary consent. Okay, she did not consent
Yes.
to him having sex with her. And the provision goes on to talk about, um, the man maybe not having reasonable grounds for believing that she was giving her consent. And it also talks about circumstances under which consent may not be given, such as by threat or by force or by intimidation or fear of bodily harm and stuff like that. Or if,
Yes.
for instance, somebody is impersonating the husband of a married woman. So basically, in
Okay.
a nutshell, rape is where someone, well, in SVG's case, where a man has sex with a woman without her voluntary consent. Okay. Obviously, there's more that can be discussed in terms of all of the elements of rape, but that's basically in a nutshell what it is. In terms of indecent assault, that is described, as I said before, under section 127 of the Criminal Code. And it says any man who indecently assaults any person is guilty of an offense and liable, if on a child under the age of 15, to imprisonment for 5 years, and in any other case to imprisonment for 2 years. And it says a child under the age of 15 cannot in law give consent which would prevent an act from being an assault for the purpose of this section. So right off the bat again, we said this provision is talking about a man who
Mm-hmm.
essentially assaults any person. Okay?
Okay.
And we see that there are different maximum penalties for if the person is under the age of 15 or over that age. In terms of if the person is under the age of 15, it's the maximum penalty is 5 years, and for any other case, it's regarding its imprisonment for 2 years. Those are the maximum penalties based on the act. Now, as we can see, the act didn't define what is indecent assault. Nor did the act specifically define what exactly is rape in terms of what are the actual acts. Now, in
Mm-hmm.
the UK, there has been a lot of legal reform, which is good. You always need to look at the laws and revise the laws and challenge the laws in terms of how we can make them better to protect the
Yes.
vulnerable groups of people. So when we look at um, rape, it doesn't exactly say what is the act, but based on my understanding, and it could be subject to correction, but it seems like if the offense of rape in SVG is at least limited to vaginal intercourse, because I know in the UK in the 1990s and above, reforms were made so that oral penetration and anal penetration could be a part of the rape, or be an act of rape in the
Okay.
UK. But based on our act, I noticed our act may have been created before those reforms were made. So if we are interpreting rape, we may be using the definition of vaginal intercourse, which is very limited and doesn't bring justice to persons who are being raped. Um, in terms of indecent assault, the act also does not say exactly what is an indecent assault, but usually an indecent assault is what we call it's an assault that is indecent. And usually
Yeah.
when you're assaulting somebody, you're causing them to apprehend, immediate unlawful violence on their person. But in the case of indecent assault, it may also include what is known as a battery in terms of where there is actual unlawful, infliction of violence on a person. So it could include touching, like touching the breast, touching the vagina, touching persons in a sexual manner that they did not consent to or cannot consent to because of their age. And based on recent developments, it appears that indecent assault includes oral sex, because based on the news that we're having regarding the child, the minor who was being abused by the male adult, it was indecent assault that he was charged with based on what I've read. Um, and she was allegedly committing an act of, oh well, he's convicted now. I wasn't there to hear all the facts, but it's reported that she was performing oral sex on him. So it appears that um, indecent assault in St Vincent and Grenadines also includes that element of um, of um, of oral sex. So
Okay.
so touching, sexual touching, or threats maybe to touch persons in sexual ways, and even oral intercourse appear to be a part of the definition of indecent assault in St. Vincent and Grenadines. But that is why it's important when we're reforming these laws to define, to make the law should be clear and certain about what it means. We shouldn't be having to go on a hunt to find
To
out
figure it out.
what is
Yes.
rape, what acts constitute rape, what is indecent assault, what acts constitute indecent assault. I think the acts should, as much as possible, seek to define these things within the act so that um, persons can know what their rights are and can be certain that that these acts are offenses and sexual offenses in St. Vincent and Grenadines, which come under rape and or indecent assault.
So the penalty for rape for a minor and an adult, they're the same or are they different?
In terms of rape, what we have in St. Vincent is that rape, it appears that the rape provision is restricted to adults. But we have statutory rape provisions. So we
Okay,
have different offenses that deal with if somebody has intercourse with a girl again, not
yes.
gender neutral, with a girl under the age of 15 and with a girl under the age of 13. Okay? And I see here it's safe with a girl under on the age of 13, the maximum penalty is life imprisonment.
Okay,
Okay? So with a girl under the age of 13, a man is having sex with a girl under the age of 13, which more than likely is probably vaginal intercourse. Because if this was the case, then the young minor who um was reported to be performing oral sex on the man, then this section should have captured her. But instead of this intercourse with a girl under the age of 13, it was indecent assault, not the statutory rape provision. So that is making me think that oral intercourse isn't included. It's
okay,
vaginal. So
okay.
it's life imprisonment. Um, in terms of intercourse with a girl under the age of 15, um, it's it says any man who has sexual intercourse with a girl of or above the age of 13 but below the age of 15 is guilty of an offense and liable to imprisonment for 5 years. So we see what is happening. So that's a really huge
It's a
gap,
disparity,
because
yes.
if it's under 13, it's life imprisonment. But if it's um a girl
50.
of or above 13 but below the age of 15, it's just a maximum penalty of 5 years imprisonment. So that's what the criminal code says. And
That
those,
is
yes.
so what if the perpetrator himself or well, we have to say himself because as you've pointed out several times, it speaks of a man committing the act. What if the perpetrator himself is a minor? What happens in that case?
Okay, well, in St. Vincent and Grenadines, based on the Child Justice Act, the age of criminal responsibility is now 12 years old. Okay, I believe in the past it may have been 8 or 9, if I'm correct. I
Somewhere
didn't
around there.
double check that, but I believe it
Yes.
was 8 or 9, if I'm correct. But no, it's 12 years old. That's the age of criminal responsibility in SVG based on the Child Justice Act, which is a very recent act, passed in 2019. Um, the thing with the Child Justice Act also is the Child Justice Act also lays out the procedure, of various youth or minors who may be who may have committed a criminal offense, and what is the specific procedure that you need to go through. In terms of practice, I personally haven't seen like persons being like a 11-year-old boy or 10-year-old boy being arrested for maybe having unlawful sexual intercourse with maybe somebody who is a girl who's 10 years old. I haven't seen it in practice. Maybe the police officers um who are panelists also on tonight's proceedings would be able to be in a better position. But again, that is another deficiency in the laws of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. It's not really very clear what you would do with certain persons, minors of certain ages, and how you would deal with them. Like if they're like if for instance the boy is 14 and the girl is 13, um and the boy is maybe 7 or 6, what are you going to be doing with them? It's not really clear. Because I know in other jurisdictions like Canada, like they specify if the minor is of a certain age, what penalties would apply, and how to deal with that particular situation if they commit an act of sexual assault. Because in Canada now they don't have a provision called rape. They have sexual assault, which covers acts that may include rape and also other offenses that we may see off, like it that may, for instance, come under indecent assault. So, in terms of that specific question on how it's done in practice, I cannot say for certain because the act isn't necessarily very clear on how, it would treat minors. But I know for offenses such as indecent assault, sorry, such as offenses such as, let me just scroll down quickly.
No
Assault,
problem.
um, intent to commit buggery, like it doesn't give an age.
Okay.
Like it says, any person who commits an assault with intent to commit buggery is guilty of an offense and liable to imprisonment for 7 years. In practice, a lot of these offenses, it's usually adults who I see getting actually charged with these sexual
Okay.
offenses. Okay, so in terms of how they deal with minors, maybe the police officers might be best dealt with in terms of how they actually go about dealing with minors who may have sex with somebody without their consent who is also underage, because I think that's a deficiency in our laws here in SVG, and it's not exactly quite clear how they will deal with that. All I'm clear about for sure is that the age of criminal responsibility is now 12.
Now, you spoke about this earlier. A man pleaded guilty to committing 2 counts of indecent assault on a 4-year-old and was sentenced to a total of 4 years in jail, 2 years for each charge. The maximum sentence, as you said earlier, is 5 years. Now, in what I read, they said that because the defendant had no previous criminal record and entered a guilty plea in the first instance, 2/3 of the sentence was taken off, according to sentencing guidelines. This sentence, as you may know, was condemned by members of the public because of the egregious nature of the crime. Are sentencing guidelines just guidelines, or can a magistrate or a judge go outside of them, and how much leeway do they actually have?
The sentencing guidelines were created um, to as the name says, to be guidelines,
Yes.
for the magistrates, to be guidelines for the judges, in the Eastern Caribbean, courts that are under the jurisdiction of the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court. Um, However, judges or magistrates may be able to depart from the sentencing guidelines depending on if on a number of factors, you know, especially if there are exceptional circumstances, why they should why they think that they should depart from these guidelines. But generally, the judges would want to follow the guidelines because it might be subject to appeal. They might appeal the sentencing and say that the judge was on a frolic of their own or doing or whatever, and not properly following the sentencing guidelines. So it's advised that, the judicial officers follow the sentencing guidelines for sexual offenses, but they may not necessarily need to do that, as there may be exceptional circumstances whereby they might be able to do that. And that will be based on a case by case basis and the facts of the specific case and all the circumstances, surrounding that case.
Yes.
So that will be up to the judicial officer to decide, but that may make them, prone
Mhm.
to, an appeal, and
Okay.
and a court of appeal, may quash, the conviction, or provide or make an order for the relevant, remedy based
Yeah.
on, the arguments brought before it and what the parties are seeking, the appellant. So, yeah, so there are a number of factors also that the sentencing guidelines, the judicial officer has to consider. Of course, as you said, if persons plead guilty, they are entitled to discount on their sentence. I believe you said 2 thirds, but I believe it's actually 1 third discount.
That's
Um,
it. Sorry. Okay.
Yes, a 1 third discount on their sentence. So whatever is the maximum, they would immediately, chop off whatever one third of that is. So they do the relevant calculations and decide, life imprisonment is usually seen as 30 years in St. Vincent. So, whatever is the relevant discount to be applied, then they would chop off the years, and then they would take into account the relevant mitigating and aggravating factors regarding the offense. They would want to know if maybe the person was in custody or on remand for however long, leading up to sentencing, and all of a bunch of different factors that they will take into account to decide, how much should be the actual sentence for the convicted person, the prisoner, before the court. So, and at that point, portions are usually at the mercy of the court, but of course they can appeal the sentencing, on various grounds. In terms of the specific case that you're referring to with the minor, I wasn't there in court. I don't know all the facts, so I don't want to speculate about, what the Madam President, because it was in the family court, what Madam President would have taken into account in coming to her decision. I don't want to speculate because I wasn't there. I'm not privy to the facts, and she, would know why she would have made those decisions. Unfortunately, our case hasn't been published online, so I don't know
Yeah.
what are all of the facts and the circumstances surrounding that case. But what we do know, based on the publications, is that he pled guilty, and of course, he's entitled to the relevant discount because of that.
Okay. Now he was charged with indecent assault. You laid out
Yes.
several charges or several sexual offenses under the criminal code. What could have been done differently? I know you say you don't want to speak out of turn because you are not in court, but do you think anything could have been done differently to secure a longer sentence?
I think it would have been up to the court to decide, because at the end of the day, it's not what I think, it's what the judicial officer who's presiding over the matter thinks, based on all of the facts and all of the evidence that is before them, all of the aggravating, all of the mitigating factors, whether or not the person pled guilty or not, if they had spent time before on remand or in custody, or whatever factor that they take into account. It's up to the judicial officer presiding over the court to decide. Of course, if we had different laws that had longer maximum penalties, then maybe the individual in that particular case would have been convicted and sentenced to a longer sentence, but in terms of imprisonment. But unfortunately, that was not the case. So um for me to go on and say what could have been done, obviously it's a fault in the law, and not
Mm,
necessarily maybe the judge or the Madam President in this particular case. Okay, it's the law is archaic, the law is outdated, the law is in need of reform, and in order for us to truly have justice, these laws need to be changed. And of course, Parliament is the one that has the authority, based on the Constitution of St. Vincent and Grenadines, to make laws for the peace, order, and good government of persons in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And hopefully, they're thinking or in the process of revising these laws so that we can better protect persons from sexual offenses, including making sure that adequate sentences or maximum sentences, are applied to the relevant sexual offense or offenses, so that it's not too low or it's not too high, but it's proportionate, to the crime being committed.
yes. Well, as you just said, the law is archaic and it's
Yes,
outdated and there needs to be um reform. And
definitely.
if it isn't being done on a parliamentary level, what can members of the public do to bring about the change, to help, for just to give them a little nudge along the way so that we can have higher penalties and people being charged with the actual crime they commit and not just giving them a slap on the wrist? What can the regular Joe do to push Parliament, the lawmakers, in the direction of having some kind of reform?
I think what we're doing now is a good example, you know, because we're spreading awareness, we're seeking to educate, we're seeking to hopefully have some sort of action come out of this discussion. You know, persons, of course, in their own way, they can go on the radio also, they can voice their opinions on social media. They can voice their outrage and condemnation for what is happening in the country. And most importantly, you know, they can go to their representatives or go to the prime minister, or maybe write to the prime minister or their representatives. I'm sure he or them are fully aware of, you know, because there a lot of them in parliament are lawyers. So or who may in fact be on the executive. They are lawyers. So
Yeah.
I'm sure they're aware of weaknesses in the laws in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. It's just a matter of them having these things as priority and being proactive to actually get the job done. So I think, you know, we can, you know, bring the issues to our parliamentarians, you know, or representatives in SVG, go on social media, various media platforms, and raise awareness and give our suggestions for legal reform. And of course, you know, one way, you know, if persons feel like their rights are being violated by these laws or they don't get justice, they could always bring challenges against these laws, you know,
Yeah.
in the courts. They can bring challenges against these laws, either saying these laws are, you know, violating their fundamental rights and freedoms or aren't adequately protecting them. And hopefully, you know, the courts, you know, are using their power to interpret, you know, um that they can interpret these laws in favor of the claimants and whatever action that they may be bringing. So persons can always challenge laws, you know, if they believe, you know, they aren't getting justice or if these laws are violating their fundamental rights in St.
Okay.
Vincent and the Grenadines. So those are just a few things that, you know, persons can obviously do. But really and truly, at the end of the day, it's really going to come down to either Parliament changing the laws or the courts on the interpretation of the law interpreting it in a certain way. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
that
Yeah.
that better protect persons or declare that certain laws are violating people's rights. Because how in the world males are not included under the definition of rape in terms of being victims, you know? And then so there's a lot of legal reform in St. Vincent and Grenadines, like legal reform, it's so pressing, it's so needed, and I don't really know what, you know, the relevant persons in power are doing. But I just hope that, you know, they take action now, because persons are being physically hurt, being emotionally hurt, mentally, sexually, you know, they're being exploited in all sorts of ways, and our laws are not adequately protecting them. And even if we may have the laws may be outdated and need reformation, updating, or the laws may be violating people's rights.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to have ensure that our laws are progressive, that we are proactively reforming our laws at every instance we get, and that, you know, we are making irrelevant changes to better protect all persons in St. Vincent, not just some, but protect all persons in St. Vincent and Grenadines, whether you're a male or you're female, or you have any other characteristic that is deserving of protection. Because when you don't have laws properly protecting people, it's violating their rights. You know, their rights are not being protected. They're subject to all sorts of abuse and exploitation, and we see it happening in St. Vincent. We know about the stories, and even in some of our own lives, we've experienced various things for our own selves. So we can definitely see that there's need for change and that there's need for reform in the SVG. Especially, there's a lot of this whole criminal code. Huh, this whole criminal code needs reform. But we're talking about sexual offenses tonight. And
Yes.
I know we're focusing on rape and indecent assault, but then there's a whole host of other sexual offenses, you know, between sections 122 to 144 that need revisiting and reforming. So hopefully the relevant powers in authority get with the program.
Now, for years there have been calls for it, a sexual offenders registry in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I even found a petition online for there to be a registry in St. Vincent. What is a sexual offenders registry? How would it work in the context of St. Vincent and the Grenadines? And is this something we can implement here given our current legal framework?
Okay, in terms of a sexual offenders registry, basically, different jurisdictions would have to determine how this sexual offenses registry would be implemented, um, and so forth, and how it's going to be enforced. But basically, it's just a registry of who is the sexual offender, maybe what offenses they have committed, maybe where they are, and so forth.
Mhm,
So that persons can have a, excuse me please, a heads up about persons who have been convicted of sexual crimes in that particular jurisdiction. How it's going to be implemented and all of the different factors that are going to be taken into account, I think that's maybe a decision left up to the relevant authorities, because different jurisdictions, of course, may find that it's important to include something or not. Um, yeah. So that's really up to the state to decide, or the relevant persons who have the relevant authorities. In terms of commenting on the sexual offenders registry, I do think that it's a good idea, but I think maybe an expert who maybe has maybe studied the actual effectiveness of a sexual offenders registry may be better able to comment on the effectiveness, because I know there might be arguments that just having a sexual offenders registry, it may not actually do much to deter persons from committing sexual crimes in society, or and persons who think that it actually, you know, may help, so that persons can at least identify who persons are who are committing sexual offense. That if this friend who you're inviting over to your house and you have a little daughter or son, you might want to wait. Is this stranger sexual? You want to maybe just look it up
mhm,
for your
mhm.
own purposes.
Yes.
Persons may abuse the information that may be available, that they may get, whether it's public or you need to go through a certain procedure now to know who is actually registered on the list. Persons may actually go on it and abuse it, and may be like, oh, yes, you committed rape here and there. Let's go and beat you. Let's discriminate against you. Try and take justice, into their own
It's our
hands,
own hands, yes.
even though that person may have already been convicted and serve their time, serve the penalty for the crime. So I believe there are probably various pros and cons to a sexual offenders registry. So I guess, the relevant authorities, if they ever would like to implement one in St. Vincent and Grenadines, would have to take all of those things into consideration. But I do think it's a good idea to at least just have it here
Mhm.
in the country.
And can we have one with our legal framework? Is there anything legally that prevents us from doing or having a sexual registry?
I personally cannot answer that question, because I haven't
Okay.
like delved into whether or not there's anything stopping us from legally having one in St. Vincent Grenadines. So I can't particularly comment on that. I don't personally know of any at
Mhm.
this point, but I haven't delved into that question personally. So I'm not informed really to talk about whether we have anything legally preventing us from having such a registry in St. Vincent.
Okay. Now, is there a statute of limitations for sexual offenses? Because we have a question here that someone asked, if can someone at 47 still take someone to court because of being abused, but now the person is in their 70s?
Um we have a statute of limitations here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines that covers various offenses. I am not currently aware. Maybe the police officers might be better able to um, comment on this, but I am not aware of there being a statute of limitations for
Mhm.
sexual offense. But obviously, if you go into the court 40 years after something happened, sorry, the police officers to report a matter. 40 years after it happened, obviously there are evidentiary issues that are going to come into place there, like why you wait so long. And
Mm-hmm.
if maybe the person ejaculated in the person's vagina, you know, you don't have evidence of the semen, so there's a bunch of evidentiary issues that may come up, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so but I'm not aware of a statute of limitations for sexual offense in SVG.
Thank you so much, Joshua. We will bring you back on screen later on in the program. We'll take a break right now, and when we return, we will speak with Constables Christina Butler and Romancia Jordan of the Sexual Offences Unit of the Royal St Vincent and the Grenadines Police Force.
Searchlight Online, now stronger and better, and with more options for everyone. Download the free app and access the e-paper and breaking news. Check out our e-papers read aloud and translation features. Read our e-paper in different formats, even when you are offline. Access our online archive as far back as 2005. Only interested in viewing ads? Go directly to our print ad marketplace. Subscribers get exclusive access to a full-color midweek e-paper edition, in addition to the weekend edition. Affordable monthly, quarterly, biannual, and annual e-subscription plans. Book, submit, and pay for advertisements online. Go to www.searchlight.vc for more details. Searchlight, journalism you can trust. Now stronger, better, and with more options for everyone.
Welcome back to the press room. We're now joined by Constable Jordan and Walker of the Sexual Offences Unit of the Royal St Vincent and the Grenadines Police Force. Good night, ladies. How are you doing?
Good night. Good night. I'm fine.
If you could just introduce yourself for our viewers to know who you are.
My name is Christina Butler and I'm attached at the Sexual Offences Unit.
Good night, everyone. I am Romancia Jordan, and I'm also attached to the Sexual Offences Unit of the Royal St Vincent Grenadines Police Force.
Thank you so much again for joining us. The Sexual Offences Unit was established in 2018 to investigate sexual offences in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Tell us a bit about the unit, how many police officers are assigned to the unit, and where is the unit based?
The Sexual Offences Unit was established on Tuesday, the 6th of November 2018. Our goal at the Sexual Offences Unit is to provide the best police and social services available to all victims of sexual crimes. Our mandate is to conduct thorough and detailed investigation in a professional, confidential, and timely manner. When the Sexual Offences Unit was launched, there were only 9 persons working at the unit, 7 of which were females and 2 were males. Currently, there are 14 police officers working at the Sexual Offences Unit. 10 are females and 4 are males. We are located at the Kittels Police Station, and our contact number is 453-4599 or 456-1750. Although our office is based at the Kittels Police Station, we investigate matters throughout St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We investigate rape and unlawful sexual intercourse with a girl under the age of 13 years. We also investigate other offenses as designated by our superior officers.
Thank you very much for that. Now, would you say having a unit dedicated specifically to sexual offenses, has it improved the investigation and prosecution of such offenses, and why do you think so?
Yes, there have been an improvement in the investigation of sexual offenses because investigations are conducted in a timely manner and case file preparations are also done in the same timely manner. The police officers in the Sexual Offences Unit are specially trained when it comes to investigating sexual offenses. We are dedicated and committed to getting the work done so that justice can be served.
Okay. Since the establishment of the unit, how many reports of sexual offenses have been made? How many people have been charged? And how many of these charges have resulted in convictions?
Okay, so the unit was established in November. So I'm
Yes.
going to give you a breakdown as to the amount of offences have been reported to the unit since the establishment.
Okay.
Now, in 2018, from November to December the 31st, we had a number of 29 crimes reported. For the year 2019, we have a total of 203 crimes reported at the unit. In 2020, we have a total of 156 crimes. 2021, we have a total of 176 crimes. So you can see since November 2018, we have a total of 564 crimes reported at the unit. Now, out of those 564 crimes, we have a total of 281 persons have already been charged for sexual offenses.
Okay.
And from the period 2019 to 2020, we have already had 13 convictions that have reached to the High Court. We still have matters on trial at the family court. There are still matters on trial going on at the High Court. So as you can see, it is a work in progress. Now, 60% of those crimes that are reported involve minors. 60% involve minors.
You said that there was a total of 500 and some odd cases of cases reported, but only 200, roughly 200 and some actually being charged. What happened for the other cases? Why weren't there charges brought against in the other cases?
Now, as stated before, some matters are still under investigation.
Uh-huh.
Some matters have been dismissed, sad to say. No fault of the police. There are some persons who sometimes don't wish to go forward with the matter, maybe because of the system and going to court. Some victims are fearful in facing persons in court. Some parents sometimes discourage people from giving evidence. So there are lots of substantial reasons why so many other persons are not charged. Also to add, because of the age of some of the defendants, maybe the defendant might be 8 or 11, and these matters has to go up for direction, charges have not been laid for some of these offenses.
Okay. So what would you say are some of the impediments in when you get to court? Like you get to court, you have a good case, you have all the evidence, and then you hear dismissed, or you hear uh we don't have enough evidence, we need something else. What do you think are some of the things that cause instances like this to happen?
Now, first of all, the main impediments in securing conviction involves evidence. There
Mhm.
must be evidence. And evidence can come in different forms. It can come in the forms of exhibits. It can come in the forms of documentary, real evidence, substantial evidence, and also witness statements. We have seen cases where persons would have seen something and heard something, but they're hesitant in giving a witness statement just to have a conviction. So we encourage persons also to report matters at the earliest possible time, because delaying a report may cause the evidence to have gone down the drain, which will
Mhm.
tamper the investigation and may cause a delay in having a conviction.
Okay. And we do? What can the public do to help the police when they're conducting their investigations so that you can secure a conviction?
The public can assist in combating sexual offenses by reporting all cases of sexual assault. For example, you might be living in a community and you might be hearing rumors that a child is being sexually abused by a father or by his or her father or a family member. Please do not ignore it. You can call the police or the Child Development Division. The Development Division number is 532-9300. Or you can call 911 or you can call us directly by the number I mentioned before, 453-4599 or 456-1750. When you call in, you do not have to give your name or provide your location or your number. We will appreciate any report that is reported.
Okay. When a complaint of a sexual nature is brought to the police, who decides what charge should be laid against the offender? Or is it the police or the DPP who makes that decision? How does this work?
Okay, so the DPP and the police, they work hand in hand. Now, although the police is the one who is responsible for laying the charges, we work with the DPP, right? Sometimes we give a charge, the DPP will say there should be additional charges, or they may give reasons as to why to withdraw a charge because of the nature of the offense that was committed. They can also recommend if something be withdrawn, or they can also recommend, let's give this person, based on the evidence, I must add, based on the evidence, they may say this person may need to get additional charges. So we work hand in hand with the Director of Public Prosecution to give charges and prosecute at the court level.
Now, earlier you said that 60% of the complaints received involved minors. In these cases, is it usually the child who makes the complaint, or a parent, teacher, or another adult? What are the most common complaints?
Well, normally, the adults make the report for the child. A child might confide in a neighbor, a friend, school counselor, all of the above that you mentioned. A child may confide in that individual. And then they take the matter further by calling us at the Sexual Offences Unit or the Child Protection Unit.
What are the most common types of complaints you see with in these kinds of complaints on sexual offenses against minors?
Okay, so for the sexual offenses against minors, we see a lot of indecent assaults. We also see a lot of unlawful sexual intercourse with a child below the age of 13. We also see incest. So a lot of these cases have been coming in recent times.
Okay. Now, you have been seeing more and more reports of sexual offenses. Are you getting more cooperation from the parents and witnesses?
Yes, we are. We are getting more cooperation. However, there are still a few parents who are hesitant and reluctant in reporting a matter, especially when it takes place at the home. And there are still some witnesses who do not want to go to court. So they will be hesitant and reluctant in providing a witness statement to the police. We might go to them and ask for a witness statement. A child or an adult may confide in them, and they do not want to go to court for numerous reasons, and we have to accept that because we cannot force anyone to give a witness statement. It has to be done voluntarily.
Okay. Now, what support services, if any, are provided to victims of a sexual offense?
Okay, so we have numerous support systems. Now, when a sexual offense is reported, we normally take a child to see the doctor and everything be thoroughly examined. Now, after that, the child is being recommended for professional help. They can see a counselor, a psychologist, to be exact. They are also referred to the ID clinic, which is the infectious disease clinic, because when children are sexually assaulted, it can be adults as well. When they're sexually assaulted, they're exposed to a lot of sexually transmitted diseases, and we all know them, like HIV, syphilis, herpes. We know all these sexually transmitted diseases. So they are referred to the ID clinic.
Okay.
They will receive medication and they will be taken care of when it comes to diseases. Then, after they have been referred to the ID clinic, there are cases where minors are involved. The Child Protection Unit is called in. Now, when the Child Protection Unit, they come in, they do what they have to do. If there are cases where the offense was committed from the home, they will remove the children from the home, take them to a safe home, make sure that they are comfortable. Sometimes they will get financial assistance and stuff like that. So we just don't leave victims hanging. We look out for them. We also work with school counselors, because when children are at school, they will display different behavior patterns because they were abused. So we work with the counselors to monitor these children, see how they perform academically. If they're falling back in their schoolwork, they can get help and stuff like that. And also, investigators themselves, they keep contact with victims. We as
Okay.
investigators, we call our victims, we see how they're doing, how they're performing, and see where we can assist them where possible. So there are numerous services out there, and we try to help our victims as much as possible.
Well, thank you so much, ladies. We'll take a break, and when we come back, we'll be joined by all our panelists for a general discussion, and we'll try to get your questions answered.
Thank you.
Welcome back to the press room. We're joined by all our panelists, lawyer Joshua Badu, constables Clisina Butler and Romancia Jordan of the Sexual Offences Unit of the Royal St Vincent and the Grenadines Force. Constable Butler and Jordan, I have a question, because in one of your responses you said um sexual offenses against girls. And I want to know what happens if you are at the station and a little boy comes. He's maybe 11 or 12, and he says, "Officer, a woman made me have sexual intercourse with her and I did not want to do it." Is there a charge that can be laid against this woman? Can the police do anything against this woman? Or if he says, "A man had unlawful sexual intercourse with me, I need something done," what can be done in an instance like that?
Okay, when a man, you say have sexual intercourse, but when a man inserts his penis into a boy's bottom, then it is classified as buggery. It is still a sexual offense and it is still investigated. We go through the same procedure. We take him to the doctor to be medically examined, and the same support services that my colleague mentioned earlier would be available to him. The same as when he report against a woman. A woman cannot be charged with rape because, as Mr. Badu said earlier, rape is when a man inserts his penis into a woman's vagina. So a woman have no penis to insult into the man. Therefore, she can be charged with another offense such as indecent assault or even indecency with a child, which are two other offenses that she can be charged with instead of the rape.
And what are the penalties for those crimes?
As Mr. Badu said before, if it's a child under the age of 15, the woman,
Mhm.
if you said the child was about 11, so he's about 11
Yes.
years old, right? So he's under 15, the maximum sentence is 5 years. If it's someone who is above 15, there's 2 years. And indecency with a child, the maximum penalty for that is 1 year. So we tend to go for the one with the higher penalty to make sure that justice has been served.
I'm not, please, to the viewers, I'm not laughing because I find it funny. I'm laughing at just a year. Someone asked, can a husband rape his wife?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Um, I saw a question earlier about the officers who were charged. There was a case, I think it was 2018 or 2019. Yes, this is what it says. The laws are not serious in these instances where the police officer who was accused with sexually assaulting the young lady at the station. What was the outcome of that case?
Well, I do not want to disclose much information, but the public would have been aware or would have seen that these officers are still at work. Well, the matter didn't go forward. It was dismissed at court for numerous reasons, at no fault of the police whatsoever, because we take these matters serious and we investigate these matters without prejudice.
So, Constables Butler and Jordan, I'm just trying to understand, right? How can a man be accused of sexual assault or of a sexual offense, be taken to court, whether there I do not know if there was any evidence in the case, but the young lady from the story I read said it was multiple times that it happened, and still be in the Royal St Vincent and the Grenadines police force, where his duty is to protect other young women like herself. And how can we sit and be okay with that? Was there any kind of inquiry into them getting their job back, or were they just placed back on the force like that, gung ho, like, okay, okay, job?
Well, for a conviction to take place, witnesses must come to court. The victims of the victim of the alleged assault must be able to give evidence. If she does not give evidence, or if no
Mhm.
witness come to court, then we just left there hanging, and the magistrate will not have any choice but to dismiss, or the prosecution team will not have any choice but to withdraw.
So the young lady was supposed to give evidence against the police, to the police. Yes.
Not to the police, but to the court, where
To
the
the court.
magistrate presides.
Who collects the evidence?
The prosecutor. The prosecutor collects the evidence, and the office of the director of public prosecution, she oversees everything, all the files, all the evidence, and so forth. There are lawyers attached to that office.
Mhm. No, we don't want you to disclose the name of the officers or anything, but are they in a position or at their current post where a situation like this could happen again?
Anything can happen at any time, whether they're at work or anywhere. So that's as much as I could say at this
Okay,
time.
I get you. You can't really release too much.
We don't
Um,
want any vigilante justice going on.
yes, yes,
Yes.
yes. I
Yes.
definitely do not want that. I
Right.
just wanted to clear that up for
Yes.
some of the viewers.
Yes. Because while we may be concerned with persons who may have committed crimes or allegedly, committed crimes, because until the person goes through trial and the evidence is presented or they plead guilty, they're basically seen as innocent, and they're entitled to that, that right, innocent until they are proved or they plead guilty. So there's usually a lot of speculation and gossip when a story comes out in the community, but if it never goes through the full trial and nobody's ever committed, the alleged victims never go through the trial, never give the evidence, persons never come forward and give evidence, for the judicial officer to decide whether or not the person is guilty or not, or the jury, if it goes, in the high court, then unfortunately, while it may be out there that they allegedly may have done something, it's just alleged, and there's no conviction. The person doesn't have a criminal record against
Oh,
them, unfortunately.
okay, Joshua, this question is for you. Can the 4-year-old get a lawyer and appeal the judgment even up to the Privy Council?
Well, it's the office of the director of public the prosecutors usually represent the victims. So if that child wants to appeal, then I think they should speak to that office and see if they would entertain an appeal regarding the sentence,
Well, it can
and if they
anything
have any grounds to
uh-huh.
appeal
Can anything be done in the civil court?
in the civil court.
Yes. Because I know in the US, if someone is charged with a criminal offense, but I know our laws reflect those of the UK, but I don't know if it's an instance where what happens there can happen now, where someone can be charged with a criminal offense and can also still be tried in the civil court for
Mhm.
damage.
Well, it depends. Maybe personal injuries is what popped to mind. Maybe there's been physical damage, emotional damage to the person, and they have medical evidence of that. Maybe they can go to the civil court and seek damages for personal injuries.
Okay.
That's a remedy that immediately comes to mind, or maybe other remedies that maybe have or maybe a remedy that is based on the facts of the particular circumstance, because I don't want to speculate what the 4-year-old went through,
Mm,
but maybe if there was, as I said, physical damage, emotional damage, she has medical evidence, I'm a doctor or psychiatrist or psychologist, maybe a lawyer can
yes.
go to this go in the civil realm of the court with a civil action and see if they can get damages. That's something that immediately comes to mind. But of course, there's other um, types of damages or
Okay.
actions that may be brought based on the facts of the particular circumstances.
Constables Butler and Jordan, earlier you spoke about collecting evidence. What kind of evidence do you think is most important to help with securing a conviction?
So evidence that are most important, I would say real evidence
Mm,
like semen, clothing, stuff like these are real evidence. They're very important to collect it at the earliest possible time in order to secure a good conviction.
and does the Royal St Vincent and the Grenadines police force have a lab to conduct the I'm just asking, you know, to run these tests to to match DNA or whatever the case may be.
Well, in St. Vincent, there is no forensic lab. However,
Um,
the items are taken overseas and they could run an analysis on the semen collected or even the blood collected. Also, another thing we use is a DNA testing, especially if the accused person volunteer his blood. If there's a child involved and we have to run a paternity test, and then it comes out positive that he is the father, then that's the way we can prove that he actually had sexual intercourse with a minor or
mhm.
an adult. Another type of evidence that is very important is the recent complaint witness statement. That is very important. That person is the person who the victim first spoke to. That person, that witness statement from that person is very important, and they can repeat whatever the victim said at court.
Okay. Now, in the sexual offences unit, I know your staff increased. Do you find is there a situation where officers try to run away from that unit and get stationed somewhere else, or do people voluntarily ask to be placed in that unit?
Well, the police officers who are working at the sexual offences unit are there by recommendation of
Okay.
our superior officers,
Okay.
and training are available for police officers throughout the organization. So if a superior officer see a police officer who is doing well in that course, they may be selected to work at the sexual offences unit.
Oh, okay.
In
Okay.
addition to what my colleague have just said, I don't think anybody would want to run from the unit per se. It's a lot of work, yes, but we work together. We don't work as individuals. We work as a team. We work together. No one man goes out. Everybody goes together. No one man do this by herself or do this by himself. We work together. And that makes it all the fun, and it makes it so good that we can bring out good results.
Now we have a question here. Isn't a recording of the physical act enough to be used as real evidence to provide concrete convictions?
Yes. Yes, that is so.
Yeah.
Mind you, the person who may have recorded the act, the author of that recording, should be willing to give a witness statement to the police. Because if the author does not give a witness statement to the police, then we cannot tender that evidence into court. But if
Yeah.
the person, they might have seen something and they want to record it for the purpose of having the evidence, and they come to court and they give the evidence in court and so forth, that will help in the conviction of the perpetrator.
Okay. Thank you very much to our panelists. We're going to take a break, and when we return, we will have the panelists give their final contribution. We'll be right back.
Searchlight Online, now stronger and better, and with more options for everyone. Download the free app and access the e-paper and breaking news. Check out our e-papers read aloud and translation features. Read our e-paper in different formats, even when you are offline. Access our online archive as far back as 2005. Only interested in viewing ads? Go directly to our print ad marketplace. Subscribers get exclusive access to a full-color midweek e-paper edition, in addition to the weekend edition. Affordable monthly, quarterly, biannual, and annual e-subscription plans. Book, submit, and pay for advertisements online. Go to www.searchlight.vc for more details. Searchlight, journalism you can trust. Now stronger, better, and with more options for everyone.
Welcome back to the press room. Constables Butler and Jordan, if you have anything that you would like to tell the Vincentian public, you can do so now.
I would like to say, when a victim of a sexual assault confides in you, you should be confidential. You should not spread that information to your friends, to your neighbors, or anyone else of the general public. You should inform the relevant authorities. Also, to the perpetrators out there who are contemplating or who may have done this already, no means no. There is no and no can mean yes. Silence is not consent in any way.
I would also like to add to what my colleague said and encourage parents to pay close attention to their children. you may see behavior changes in them. You may see academically they are falling back. You may see people getting close to them who were not close to them before because these people are trying to groom them, to abuse them. So parents, you have to look out for your children. Also be careful of what they do on social media. We have seen increase in stuff on social media between our young people. They have been exchanging personal videos of private parts, and all these things are avenues and ways people are using to get to these children, to abuse them. We also encourage parents to be the biggest supporter of their children. Nobody might not want to believe your child out there, but you as the parent has to be the person to stick with your child, whether it's a man or it is a family member or it is maybe your husband. Stick with your child. Believe your child at the first instance until it is proven otherwise. Be the strongest supporter, because when you are abused, you look for people to comfort you, to be there for you. And if the person who brought you into this world doesn't believe you or doesn't support you, it leaves them with a different feeling, a feeling where they want to be away from everybody and desert themselves. We also encourage parents. I would also encourage parents as well. I'm targeting the parents because we're seeing this over and over again. I'm also targeting the parents to also don't go and take bribes. Sometimes it may happen. They want to take bribes from these defendants or these accused in the interest of themselves. Look out for their children. Your child should be your first interest. After that, any other thing can come. So don't discourage your child. You may not want to say that, oh, our family is up there and we don't want to get it out. It's not going to go out there because the family court is a private setting. We are confidential as a unit, so it won't get out there. You have to be the one to stand by your child and protect your child. So parents, do as much as possible and report the offenses as soon as it comes to light.
And also,
I
there are
just
two of
I-
limitation when it comes to sexual offenses. So if you are 16 now and you are assaulted when you are 10, the matter could still be reported.
Joshua, before you go, we got a question here from someone who asked if parents can be arrested for failure to report or for holding back, like Officer Jordan said, for taking bribes. Can a parent be arrested for that if their child tells them I was sexually assaulted, or they even report it to the police and then later comes back and say no because they took a bribe or something like that?
Well, if you're taking bribes, then I think that that's affecting the administration of justice. So maybe that may come under an offense of contempt of court. If you're taking bribes and interfering with justice, if the matter is under trial already. So I think I feel like if maybe you're contempt of court, in contempt of court, because you're affecting the administration of justice. In terms of if there's a criminal offense in SVG of a mother who fails to report sexual abuse, I'm not aware of a criminal offense of failure to report if your child is being sexually abused. I'm not aware of any criminal offense in that regard currently in St Vincent Grenadines. I don't know if the officers are aware of such an offense.
Well, according to the Child Care and Adoption Act, there are numerous people who are mandated to report these crimes. The health caregivers, the doctors, the teachers, police officers, and so forth. And failure to do so, they can be imprisoned or even fined. And also, if a parent does not cooperate with the police, we do not have to use them. We could use a child protection officer in the absence of the parent to walk along with the police to make sure justice has been served. So we don't need the police, the parents guide, the parents' presence there when we're investigating. We could use the child protection officers to do that.
There we go. But
Yeah.
is that a criminal offense?
Can you repeat?
But is it a criminal offense per se under the Child Care and Adoption Act if a parent doesn't report or does what they're supposed to do? Is it a criminal offense?
Um, I do not think
I
so.
don't think so per se.
Yes.
But under
Okay.
the Child Protection Act, there can be charges that can be made against them.
Okay.
Okay. Joshua, if you would like to take the floor now.
Well, what I would just like to do is I would like to just encourage all of us to continue to educate ourselves upon issues affecting children and issues of sexual abuse. They're very prevalent issues in St. Vincent and Grenadines, that violate people's fundamental rights and freedoms. It's really a serious infringement on someone's rights, when you violate them sexually, whether it's rape or indecent assault or the list of offenses that are currently listed under the criminal code in SVG. So I just want to encourage everyone to continue to educate themselves and spread awareness towards these issues in whatever way that we can. And one way that we are doing it is through this evening's proceedings, which is good because we continue to educate each other. I don't know everything. You don't know everything, Miss Monroe. The officers don't know everything. So we continue to share knowledge with each other and continue to grow. So I want to just continue to educate each other and continue to spread awareness towards these issues. Of course, with the goal for change. So I just want to encourage our legislatures, persons in parliament to do the right thing, to ensure that our laws are revised, the sexual offenses are revised and actually enacted, and laws are passed and enforced in St. Vincent that would adequately and properly and better protect persons who are victims of sexual crimes in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Because one thing that the recent issue with the minor who was performing oral sex on the man highlighted was that it's really an issue with the legislation. It's really an issue with the legislation because the officers them could investigate and prosecutors could prosecute all they want and the judges or magistrates could make their decisions. But if the confines of the law only allow certain things, then these officers just have to work within the confines of the law. You can't go beyond that. You know, so unless in the case of sentencing, there are exceptional circumstances that the judicial officer may take into account to want to depart from those particular guidelines. But it's really an issue with the law. So legal reform is so important. It's 2022. We're in the 21st century. We need 21st century laws, not 20th century, not 19th century laws, and even some of these laws that we've inherited from the British Empire, they have reformed these
Mhm.
laws. So we could always look at what they're doing, look at what the best practices are in the UK, or look at what the best practices are in other jurisdictions. Because as I mentioned before, even Canada, they've totally done away with the offense of rape. Now it's sexual assault. And they've expanded on a number of different offenses also, and including new offenses to properly deal with sexual crimes. So there's a wealth of information out there, and it's just the persons in authority, really having the will and putting these things in priority because it's really needed. You can't have a situation whereby a boy is being raped and he can't get proper justice. You know,
Yes.
in St. Vincent, in terms of the penalties that may be applicable to his circumstances, but you telling me a woman or a girl of a certain age is able to, have certain penalties, maximum penalties available for the accused or the convicted person in their particular circumstances. So a lot of things in St. Vincent need to be reformed, and especially the criminal code, and especially our sexual offenses. The laws are archaic, the laws are outdated, a lot of them, and they need to be updated and they need to be reformed so that justice can really be done in St. Vincent and persons' rights can be protected and persons can feel protected, because when we know what these laws mean and the maximum penalties that may apply, we may not feel protected. You know, as a man or a boy, if you hearing that, oh, only a man can rape a woman in St. Vincent based on the rape provision, how are you going to feel? You don't feel protected. You don't feel like if the law can bring justice to you, and we don't want persons taking justice into their own hands. Because if they don't feel like if the law is going to bring justice for them, that is what they're going to do, or think, or may want to do, even though that's not advised. So we need to ensure that we have laws that properly protect all persons. The laws are gender neutral as much as possible. You know, that the sentences are proportionate to the crimes that are being committed. That we try and have laws that cover, a myriad of circumstances in which crimes may be committed and how they may be committed and when they may be committed and all of that. We need to ensure that our laws are all encompassing and, include everyone. So those are just some things, that I would just like to leave as closing words for tonight's proceedings. Legal reform is needed, like it is
Yesterday.
needed in St. Vincent. We need our laws reformed, and I hope the relevant persons in power, really take action quickly, because I'm a lawyer, so I hear about, progress being made in certain areas regarding sexual offenses, but we need the law to be passed. We need quicker revisions and consultations, so that the law can be properly passed, so that it can be actually enforced. Because, having ideas and having drafts is good, but you need a law properly passed and enforced to really bring justice for the crimes that are committed towards persons who are victims of sexual crimes, and especially minors in St. Vincent and Grenadines.
Thank you so much, Joshua. Before we go, I just saw a comment that said, advocate for reform and do not bash the magistrate or police, which is so true, because the police, they're doing the best with what they have, and the
Within the
lawyers are
confines of the
working.
law.
Yeah, exactly, and the lawyers are working. The lawyers and magistrates are working within the confines of the law. We cannot bash
They're
them.
trying to.
They're doing their jobs the way that they're supposed to do it. We just have to help them. You heard the officers say, report, keep evidence, get evidence, speak to them. They're very professional. They have services available if you need it. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you to our panelists for agreeing to be on the show tonight. I hope you, our viewers, enjoyed the show, learned something, and had a great time with us tonight. See you next week, same place, same time in the press room.
Bye.